Hi, this is Leela Harris here with Kindi Dulai-Gill. And we're starting a new series of videos. We just ended 9 videos. Those were focused on mental health. And so we're starting a new series, and we're going to be focused on relationships. And both Kindi and I are Dalian method facilitators. So that's the practical tool we use to what we've worked through and the insights we've gotten, and where we share from a lot of times. Yeah, so relationships is so important as far as having many, many opportunities for transformation, right? And so that's one major thing we'd like to talk about, is keeping that focus on what are the opportunities for our own personal transformation within the relationships, and what are all the things that come up, right?
I feel like a lot of pain comes up when we are interacting with other people, particularly the ones that are the closest to us. And we don't necessarily know why we should have to endure that type of pain, or what the purpose of it is. So I'm really happy that we're discussing relationships, because it's a fundamental aspect of what affects human beings really badly or really greatly. And so at least we're going to get a chance to talk about some of the nitty gritty, and maybe some of the things that people don't like to talk about when it comes to their relationships. So hopefully we'll have a very honest debate in the next series as we go through these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the highs and the lows, you're right. The opportunity for heartbreak, pain, devastation, and for the, beautiful, beautiful heart connection, bliss, feeling accepted, feeling loved, feeling like a new person, whether it's an intimate relationship or friendships, family, having a group of friends. This applies to all the relationships in our life, even coworkers and, people like that.
Yeah. And so those are the two extremes, like in the state of like that pain and then the ecstasy. But I think, but also there's that beautiful place of just where you feel safe, where you know that it's okay to just bring all of yourself into that relationship, and that all of you is going to be accepted. So, we'll end up having discussions about the whole pendulum, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I know one major issue that comes up in maybe, I think, just about all our relationships is dealing with the pain of being alone, or the fear of being alone, right? Whether it's an intimate relationship, that one really brings it up, romantic relationships, but also with friendships, with family, even at work, when that feeling inside comes where we're afraid to be alone in some way. Yeah.
I think that topic about being alone is quite a curious one for me, because when somebody watches you from a distance and they go, oh, okay, well, like in my case, they go, oh, she's got a husband and she's got 3 children, and so she's bound to feel good. But and say maybe it would be you, like, because you don't have an intimate relationship, you live on your own. So perhaps somebody in the so-called situation that you're in would look across and go, wow, she doesn't feel alone, and she's got all of that, but this is how I feel. And I think it's been a massive surprise to me to see that even when you're within a family and you have people around you, how alone you can feel with that setup. Because this thing about feeling alone is universally felt by all of us, in small doses or big doses, whatever the doses are. And we don't necessarily know that we're afraid, but yet our conversations are being affected by that thing lurking around in the background. Like, I just recently discovered that when it comes to saying certain things and being completely upfront with what I'm seeing and how it affects me and wanting to articulate it accurately, that I was not able to do that because there was a 3-year-old memory inside me that was from a very, very innocent experience where I had been left alone, but had inappropriately drawn the conclusion that I was going to be alone for the rest of my life.
Mm.
My mum had just gone shopping, and we had been left at home for a bit, but because it happened without an explanation, the tiny little 3-year-old version of me was, one, terrified to be alone. Second, I had my young sister with me, who was only about a year or something, or year and a half. So suddenly this little 3-year-old has this responsibility for another person who is now super terrified that she's going to be on her own for the rest of her life. But she's got no context of course, the person's coming back. And of course, what they've gone to do is very innocent and it's very simple. No ability to relate to that. And yet the conclusion then stayed with me for 51 years.
Wow.
So the simplest of things can affect us without us even realizing what they're doing to us.
Yeah, it can really bring up those early years experience, and we can just kind of viscerally feel it in the body, even when we don't exactly have the memory. Yeah.
So I would be in situations where I would be, say, like I've just been to Japan recently. So I'm at a sightseeing event, all 5 of us are there, and yet I'm watching all the things unfold around me, and inside I'm feeling alone. And when I had this recent experience with the Dalian method to discover why I was afraid to be alone and why I even felt alone, and this memory of a 3-year-old experience arose, afterwards I said to my son, I said, do you realize for 51 years, even though I've been with people, I've felt alone? And he said, oh, Mom, that's so sad to think that's how you've been feeling. And I said, I didn't even know that was what I was feeling until it surfaced like this recently. And now I see that the career I chose, by being at the top of the ladder and being the chief executive, I was alone in my actions, in the decision making, everything that I had to do.
Responsibility again.
Responsibility that I took. And so, and often when we're afraid to be alone, we can't even be decisive sometimes, because we're afraid that we're going to be isolated in that decision if it goes wrong, and all the spotlight's going to be on us. So then we could possibly not even make a decision. So this fear to be alone can affect us in a multitude of ways that don't necessarily show a linear line to it, right?
Yep.
It's not a straight line.
Yeah, and I know in my past, in relationships, when I was asked how I feel about something, or what I think, I would go blank. Yeah, because it's like I would try to connect with how I felt or what I was thinking, but there was something blocking it, and it was having to do with, being alone. It's related to that. And always needing to look outside of me. So when someone asked me what I think, it was like, I don't even know. I had no way to connect with that. And I was so used to looking outside for love, for attention, for connection. There was a lot of fear to be alone. And then when I've spent time being single, a lot of my friends that had a more obvious fear of being alone, where they constantly needed either a friend around or having a partner in their life, they thought I was really independent because I could be single or be in a relationship and it was fine. But actually I had a lot of fear of being alone. But compared to them, they didn't see that. But when I was alone, it wasn't like I was connecting to myself and exploring myself and really being with myself. I would be keeping myself busy, watching movies. And also because I was afraid of being alone, I wasn't taking responsibility for myself. So it would be exhausting to be around people, because then I didn't know how to take care of myself when I was around people. So in order to take care of myself, I had to get away from people, because there was a lot of fear there.
And when you're saying take care of yourself, what are you making reference to there? Like, for example,
Well,
like if
like,
I don't understand that. Like, why would you
yeah.
move away from somebody because you're taking care of yourself?
Well, remember when you said making decisions?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, I need to eat right now, or let's sit down, or just the simple things, normal things, but that were very difficult for me. And actually, I don't think that's very uncommon. I think a lot of people experience that. And when people experience overwhelm in their relationships, that might be connected to that lack of connection to ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. So what you're saying there is that if you were in a group and you knew you were hungry, you wouldn't be able to say, I'm hungry, let's eat now. But you would know that you are hungry, so you'd have to then leave the group to look after yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if it was exactly like that. It was definitely hard for me if everyone else was saying, hey, we're going to do this, and I'm not feeling to do that.
Okay, yeah.
It's not like I never spoke up and said, hey, I'm hungry. It's just I kind of I needed a lot of permission.
Yeah.
And so if it felt like people were going another way, it's like, it was hard for me. Mm. And same with my partners. If they felt something strongly, it was very difficult for me to form any other opinion. I would just feel what they were feeling because I was especially as children, but, this is definitely a case with me. I was so tuned in, that survival mechanism of tuning into what's going on with everyone else. Like that was my focus. So because that I spent so long being focused on that, that's where my attention was tuned in. So I had to spend several years coming back and tuning into internal what's going on. Because it's like I didn't even know what was going on with me at the time.
But are we not all, in the way that we are raised somehow, are we not all tuned in to what's happening outside of us? Like what other people expect of us, or what they need from us, or what's acceptable to be fit in and belong, or what's the nice thing to do, or what's the kind thing to do. So I feel like very few of us are given the training to know what we need for ourselves, or to even understand that that's actually important. Mm-hmm. And maybe this thing about the fear to be alone is one of those things that comes up. Like, for example, I'm afraid to be alone, or I was extremely afraid to be alone, but yet the reality is I am alone. Mm-hmm. The facts are I am alone in everything that I'm going to do, because I alone equip this body, and I alone reside in these thoughts.
And you alone feel your feelings. No one can feel that exact and have the same experience.
And I'm alone. I'm having the experiences that are happening through this body. So factually, I'm alone and you're alone, and every other person around us is actually alone. And yet our ability to understand that truth, that we are alone, is affecting us all the time because we're afraid to be that. Mm-hmm. Even though we are that all the time. So I wonder where that comes from, the fact that we are actually physically alone and yet we are afraid to be it. Like, why does that arise?
I think it's just the experience of having an ego. And that's how the ego is. We have this inbuilt mechanism that's like survival, survival, survival. It's not about the joy of self-realization for the mind. The mind is like, I just need to survive. Yeah, so much of this work is dealing with that part of ourselves that wants to just stay in control and doesn't care about the truth and doesn't care about the inner world and just wants things. I want this, all these temporary things.
Yeah.
But Yeah.
So the survival stops us from seeing the truth that we are alone.
I think that's a huge part of it.
Or is there something else that is seeking a connection in some way, and maybe what we're really seeking is the connection with ourselves,
Yeah.
even though it looks like we're looking for connection with you or with your husband, with your daughter or with your mother or with your coworker.
Yeah.
But
because we know something is missing, like you feel that there is something missing. Yeah.
So it's the connection. The connection's missing, but the connection we're really supposed to be looking for is the connection with ourselves.
Well, it's the only thing that's going to truly fulfill us, because if it's with someone else, we'll temporarily feel, those moments of happiness, but there's going to be always that feeling of, I could lose this.
Yeah.
Like, because it's, excuse me, because it's outside of us, because we can't control another human being. And yeah, so there's always that fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I'm wondering, some people might hear us talk about, well, the reality is you are alone. And they might think, well, then why? Well, I don't want that. I don't want that reality. Like, that sounds awful. And so, but it's actually not awful, but there's fear there. Do you know how to explain that?
Yeah, my fear of being alone has lessened the more I've got in tune with my intuition and my understanding that everything that's happening through me is revealing itself moment to moment, and that guidance that's coming in from existence moment to moment means I can never actually physically be alone either. So it's like like I'm just about to say the absolute paradox to what I just said a few minutes ago. So that even though physically I look alone, and physically as a human body I've got all these thoughts going on in my head and these experiences I'm having, but underneath that I'm still connected to the universal force that is fueling me. So the more I've gone inwards and made connection with that universal force that's feeding in me, the less I actually feel alone in my own skin, and the less I need a person outside of me to fill me up, because what is filling me up is this beautiful connection inside me.
Yeah, because it's almost like through that you're connected, you have everything.
Yes.
So it's like everything's in there. And yeah, and at the beginning, how I talked about relationships are such incredible opportunities, even though they can have those lows and the pain and the fear. I think relationships really can give us the opportunity to face these things and find that within ourselves. Because, like, I know with me, for chasing those kind of things in people, and, well, mostly in people, actually, and in my family, hoping for something and needing for something. Either I didn't get it and it hurt, or I got it and I realized actually it's not enough. Like, it's never enough. Yeah. That's what I felt. So then it was like, okay, I'm ready to kind of go beyond that relationships. But the thing is in that space, when you were describing that, Kindi, I was thinking about when you're in that space, then you can really enjoy people.
Yes.
Like, you can really enjoy those relationships. And it's so much better in that feeling of when we're connected in ourselves like that.
Yeah.
And then we can have fun. We're not like worried about what's the person going to think. Are they going to leave me? What are they thinking? All that stuff kind of melts away in that. Yeah.
But that's why in deep friendships, I guess you always feel so comfortable and so connected, because typically you don't have that sort of like sense of neediness around it. You're just enjoying the company, and you know that experience of enjoying the company is going to come to a finite end at some point. And then because it's going to come to a finite end at some point, you're not vested in trying to hold on to it for the rest of your life. You come into the exchange, you enjoy the experience, and you walk away. But say that wasn't a friend, but it happened to be your husband or wife, or something that is like more of the permanent thing that you're wanting to keep in your life.
Or maybe even a parent or a child.
Or a parent or a child. Then suddenly it's no longer I'm arriving into this experience, I need nothing from you, and I'm moving away. It becomes, give me this, I didn't get that, you misunderstood me here, I wanted that, you don't get it. Like there's a sense of I need something from you, and that's why I have to hold you here for the rest of my days, because I have to have this from you, and I'm clinging. Changes. And the minute you try to possess that love, whatever that is, you've destroyed it.
Yeah. And then that joy of being with each other and all those good things are just, we don't experience them, which is okay if it becomes that opportunity for, okay, I'm going to, like it breaks our heart, and then we have to go deeper. We have to start, when that's the opportunity. If we just keep clinging for the rest of our lives, which I know some people do, sadly, they don't go deeper. They don't ask questions about, what's going on here? Why do I feel this way? Why do my relationships never work out? Why do we always fight? Why can we never, these things? Or they just we feel fed up with that heartache, with the pain, with the conflict. That is actually so useful in my experience, because then there's a change happening where we've hit, we're at the end of our ropes, our wits end, and then something can happen. I think that's really, really valuable.
Well, yeah, as long as you get into contemplation stage over why is it happening, and you have that awareness that says, I want something different, and I'm the one that's responsible for creating it. Because a lot of people can be in that painful state in a relationship where it's not working. Say, for example, they're being abused or something, and it's not working for them, but they have no way of even rationalizing that something better is possible. So it's an opportunity, provided you have the willingness to want more for yourself. You have to bring that aspect of yourself in. How much time have we had then so far? Because we're going to try and keep these episodes.
We got a few more minutes. Okay. About 5 more minutes.
About 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
So with the topic of aloneness, I really only became aware of how alone I felt or how scared I was to be alone with certain times in my life. For example, when I moved from England to Canada, that move really alerted me to that sense of aloneness, because now I didn't have a career to occupy myself in. I didn't have my family, or my extended family, that is, to be busy with. I didn't have my old friendships. So there was a lot of time that I had with myself, which was the first time in 40 odd years. And so it was my first real dose of, oh, wow, I don't like this feeling. And looks like I'm actually scared to be alone. But in your life, was there a big pivotal moment when you became aware that you were afraid to be alone?
I think what it felt like inside is I don't like myself.
Oh, okay.
I don't like what it feels like to be me. I don't like myself. That was just kind of, I wouldn't even call it awareness, because I was so identified with, I don't like who I am. I don't like myself. So a lot of it was, I think, based on that, on how I felt in my own skin. And
that's when you came to the realization that underneath all of that was that you were afraid to be alone in that skin.
I think years later, working with, when I worked with the self-judgments,
Right.
All the self-judgments, those were also beliefs that I needed to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't, I don't think it was all about fear of being alone. I think that these things kind of piled on and created this kind of massive discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
There's fear of being alone. I don't like myself. I'm a bad person. What's wrong with me? I'm this. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. Like all these things, you know.
Right.
So it was just like a big dark kind of darkness inside. But then as I started chipping away, I did get to something that wasn't a self-judgment. It wasn't like there's anything wrong with me. It's just like I'm afraid to be alone. It was more, yeah, it's almost like primal almost.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that feeling. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hoping that we will be able to do in these short episodes this time is maybe refer to what you were talking about in terms of the opportunities. So you just talked about like layers, or like you didn't like yourself, and there was this that you pulled away, and that you pulled away. So in order to pull away at all these things, typically life gives us a nudge. It goes knock knock, knock knock. I want you to do something, right? So, like for example, when you end up in conflict, so you're in knee deep in an argument with somebody, it's a nudge that something inside you wants to be transformed.
Absolutely.
And there's the opportunity to do something. Another example, and so hopefully we can do one episode just around conflict.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah.
But then another nudge might be you're in a situation, maybe you're in the workplace, and you're constantly being criticized for what you're doing, and that necessarily makes you feel uncomfortable. So criticism, again, is another nudge. It's another knock, knock, knock. It's showing up at your doorstep because there's a transformation that's possible for you. What are the other examples of topics we could discuss around
situations where you feel maybe not included in some way? Like people aren't including you. They don't seem to, you know, it's like I'm not, so I'm being left out.
Or you don't get an invitation. You don't get asked.
Other people are close to each other, but you're not in that circle, that kind of thing. And it could be in your family. It could be coworkers. It could be friends. That's a huge one. And anybody watching this video, if you're thinking of something like, I hope they say this because I want to hear about it, please message us and tell us what you want to know more about, or you want to hear us talk about and discuss.
Another one would be being misunderstood. So
that's a huge one.
Saying or expressing your intentions are misunderstood through whatever the story is that somebody else is living through. A big key one appears to be in relationships. Am I loved? I'm not loved. Like that's deep wrenching pain.
I'm not loved. I'm not appreciated. No one notices, you know, I'm doing all this.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about me. Like all of that.
No one cares about me.
So we can cover those themes about not feeling loved.
And maybe people aren't sensitive to what I'm going through. People aren't sensitive to how hard things are for me, or they're being selfish. I'm not being considered. I'm not being heard. I'm not being seen.
Another one that I know for sure that I've been through is that sense of I'm being bullied. I'm being controlled, and I'm being bullied, and I'm being suppressed, and bullied, controlled, held back. Like all those sort of
jealousy, possessiveness coming from someone else.
So those
jealousy and possessiveness coming from us.
Right.
If that's the case, if that's what we're experiencing.
And then another area would be sort of in relationships where there seems to be like a misbalance of responsibilities.
Like I give this much, or I'm doing all this.
And it's not being received back. It's not in balance. It's not coming back in its fair share. it's not,
or there's nagging, or the other person is always wanting this. They're never happy. Nothing's ever good enough. That kind of experience. Yeah.
so with that would be complaining would fit into that category too, where nothing's good enough.
Yeah.
What other things can you think of immediately that come under the heading of relationships that we experience?
Also the really, I think we should cover the really deep and beautiful experiences at some point.
Yeah.
How like, oh, I've never felt this happy. You know, that beautiful, like, you're just like, wake up in the morning and it's like, yes, like so happy to be alive. Like and that feeling of when that changes though.
Okay.
Or when it's up and down. So that can be hard.
So that's that sense of appreciation and gratefulness, and then when that disappears, and then you're trying to hold on to that peak experience.
Yeah, it feels like it's left. You're now left with this something missing inside. Yeah.
Demanding, like that also seems to be a dynamic in relationships.
Yeah, and fear. If I don't do what this person wants, or if I'm not who they want me to be, they'll leave me, or they'll stop being my friend, or I'll lose the opportunity, job opportunity, whatever that is. It could be related to how am I going to eat, pay my bills, survive. Yeah, and a lot of these come into our relationships with people for sure.
Yeah, and then
money.
Onto the topic of using your voice. Like I can't speak, I'm invisible, I can't express what I want to say, my voice doesn't matter, I'm insignificant, I'm not important, like those aspects.
Yeah, that's great. As far as, that's a whole lot of territory.
We
got a lot to talk about, but and I think the main thing is we want to end this with all these things. They really are opportunities, even in the moment. You know, even me and Kindi, we've been doing this work for years, but in the moment, it can be really, really challenging. And then, it is really helping us to know ourselves, to transform ourselves, to help us come to love ourselves by showing us what we need to see. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time and like deep kind of looking in and working with it to really see what the situation is about. But
I mean, the sense of desperation that can be felt, neither of us are dismissing the extent of that pain that can be felt. And although we're using the word opportunity, for somebody who's in an extreme amount of pain, sometimes it's hard to hear that situation is happening for you and not to you. Like it's happening for your benefit so that you can get this internal connection with this universal force. And it's happening because you are loved so that you can experience all of that. But in the moment when you're going through it, it just feels like you're the victim. So maybe that's another topic that we ought to discuss. Relationships when we begin to feel like the victim of circumstances that just are so relentless and they're not backing, they just keep coming at us. So we can cover that. So we're not dismissing where you might be feeling in your relationships, but we're here to try and guide you as to what to do with that trauma and or otherwise that's happening, and how to get out of it and sort of, so to speak, uncreate the unpalatable parts of the relationships and the interactions that you're actually in. And then going forward, those situations become more and more like they feel like opportunities. Instead of just having this like, oh, these, this is a great idea. It starts to feel like, okay, this is an opportunity, which is a really enriching experience to have and a nice way to live your life, actually. Yeah. So we look forward to discussing more about relationships. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Kindi.
Thank you, Leela.